Hello everyone. So yeah, my name is Diego. I work for EcoBee. We're a smart home company, famous for our thermostat basically. So you can consider us like the main competitor of the Nest. And I'll be talking today about a little bit more of like a abstract concept, like some of how we're using it at EcoBee, but at the same time, this is very like how you could use Contentful to enhance the experience of your editors. EcoBee right now is in a transition where we're moving from the classic LAMP stack WordPress kind of like environment, and we're moving to using Contentful as a headless CMS, and we're using basically we're going with the Jam stack. So static size generation with Gatsby, Netlify is our deployment pipeline, and yeah, Contentful. So basically all the Kool-Aid together. So yeah, basically yeah, intro to UI extensions. So if you have never heard of them or like you don't know at all about like what UI extensions are for Contentful, this is directly from the docs. So it's what they call like app that uses components called appearances to make the fields of a content type editable. UI extensions are enabling developers to replace these components with HTML applications. I'll talk on that point later. So the editing experiences of the Contentful web app can be customized. So as you can see, basically you can turn a regular text field into a text field that has some kind of validation. So that's not already built in the Contentful editor, but it allows you to create those specific customizations. Why do I have the HTML5 applications straight through like that? Is because yes, and the bare bone, like the minimum that you could do is just create an HTML file that it has the SDK embedded in it, and just you interact with the admin, and you just need another file to just make sure the Contentful understands it. It's a very simple way. But that is not limited to that. You can actually deploy a full React application as like your UI extension, which is actually like our second demo that we'll see today. So basically, yeah, what do you get already with Contentful versus what you might want? So Contentful already provides a lot of, I will say, the majority of the content type that you normally need, like rich text, number, date, location, media, boolean, JSON object, and the reference, which is that connection that we were seeing in the previous demo. I have the text and the JSON highlighted there because those are the ones that we're basically going to be customizing on top of them in the demos that are going to be presented. But on the other side of the story, as you can see, those are like more specific content types that you might want to create for your users. They're very related to your specific needs. So I have like combined dropdowns, which is our first demo, is when you have like a relation between different dropdowns that they all need to share the data, and you need to make sure that all the data is selected. You don't want to have 3 different dropdowns as 3 different fields. And autocomplete, so a regular just text field that just allows you to get that autocomplete function. E-commerce data, you bring stuff from Shopify, for example. As you can see, the autocomplete and the e-commerce data, we're starting interacting with external APIs. So that's kind of like a recurrent thing that you're going to find with a lot of the UI extensions. It allows you to interact with different APIs outside of Contentful, but it still enhance your admin experience. And I will say the last 2 ones, I'll call it like the more like obscure ones, like those are more devy or more DevOps type of things. The refresh an endpoint or a trigger a build. So this can be just literally a button that it does something for you, for your developers, like refreshing the endpoint of an Express application or building an Netlify build that apparently is coming as an app right now. It's like, you're already taking that. So yeah, so you can see they're very specific use cases. So yeah, where do we start with all this? Creating your first extension in Contentful. So the basics, as I said before, you just need an index, the HTML file, and you need an extension.json. The index is where you're going to have your application running, basically, and the JSON just provides metadata to Contentful to understand, well, what is your extension. An ID, the name that's going to show up in the admin panel, the source, which is where your actual file is, and the field types are the field types that you want to target. So you're going to be able to just use the object field in this case, or you can say like the text field, or as you can see, it's an array, so you can put many fields depending on what UI extension you're trying to build. And the next thing that you need to do is you can use the Contentful CLI to automatically just pull that directly as soon as you have your folder, basically your project set up in this way. You can use the CLI, quickly run it, and upload it to your space. And that's just gonna basically have it available there. And the last thing that you need to do is just like apply it to the field that you need. So I'm gonna quickly just show you a very kind of like simple example. I hope this kind of like looks like there. So this is a repo that I have from Contentful that is just a bunch of their examples that they have there. I already have the CLI installed in my computer, and I already have it like connected to my credentials with the with our space. So let's say that I want to do the YouTube one that is right there. As you can see, if I show you, you see that it's exactly the 3 files that I was telling you. You have an index and a JSON, and you have a, well, I read you, like it's up to you. And then I just need to run the Contentful. As you can see, I've already run this many times because it's already like auto-completing to me. Contentful, this is the CLI. You just pass the extension. I want to create one. In what space do I want to upload this UI extension? If I run this and the internet doesn't let me down, yeah, okay. So it's basically telling us successful. You created a UI extension that is right now in your Contentful space. So if I go to my Contentful space, whatever this is, okay, and I go to my extensions, you're gonna find the YouTube ID here. I should have probably shown you this before so you don't think that I'm lying, but yeah, it is there. And the next thing that you just need to do is go to a content model. So I have one that I created for the Meetup example. Select the editants, go to appearance, and you're gonna find the YouTube ID option in here in your extensions. You save it, save your content model. Now you can actually go to the content, edit it. As you can see now, this YouTube field, which is just a text field, now it looks different. You can actually paste a copy. You can paste I might have a, no, I don't have a. You can paste a regular, I'm not gonna look for it right now, but a YouTube ID there, and it's gonna give you basically the ID on the top. That's like the enhancement that you're getting on top of a text field, just by doing that extension. As you can see, you can do it pretty quickly. So now let's just do, yeah, my first demo, which is basically a fork from Shai's. Yeah. This is kind of like my introduction to UI extensions. I was thinking around like how can I solve some of these problems that EcoVE has that just these fields don't really solve it, and I encountered that specific demo that I decided to fork it and modify a little bit. So yeah, what are your goals basically here? You're gonna try to turn a JSON object that, yes, it is great to have data that is connected to each other, but it's definitely not friendly for any editor out there. So you're gonna try to make it in a more friendly way. Like I said, create a UI that basically connects all these fields together, basically your JSON keys and all of the different values. And at the end of the day, just keep track of our board game sessions. So the setup of this app is pretty simple. Your 2 main files that you only care, and as you can see, there's an HTML, and this is where the SDK comes in play. You really want to have the SDK there because it's the way for you to, when this application is running on the Contentful cluster, to connect with the admin, and that's how you can interact with the fields there. Internally, this is the part that I kind of like took Shai's example and I just like refined a little bit. I was like lazy. I don't want to write all my HTML and like my entire form. So I just create a bunch of data. This is what I want to do. And then I do classic old-fashioned jQuery DOM manipulation to generate a bunch of fields for me. Nothing that I need to show in here because there's nothing really fancy about it. But this is the part that actually is kind of like important about it. You're gonna have now the SDK initialized in your window because you already imported it in your file, and that's gonna allow you to interact with the SDK. You initialize the SDK, and then you can start interacting with the field. As you can see on the top, the first thing that I'm trying to do is get a value to make sure that if I get the content of the value that is existing in that field, and then I'm checking if the value has some kind of data. If it doesn't have it, then we set the data. And the last thing is here, basically when a value changes, so if the admin is interacting with the field and it changes the value, I need to make sure that I trigger my functions. I haven't commented there because again, this is just a query. I just go into the field, finding the value, replacing the value and putting it into something else. The only things that you really care is those like extension field set value. Those are the things that the SDK actually allows you to interact with Contentful. So I'm gonna show you how that looks in a content model. So if I go to the same content that we had before, as you can see, we have a JSON editor that we could technically start just writing things here, and that will be terrible for our editors. But we can go to the same content model that we had before and modify it here. And now we're gonna say that we're gonna do this specific UI extension. That's the one that I was just showing you right now with the screenshots. If I save it and I go to the same content model, now you're gonna see that JSON turned into something completely different. Now this is an editable, it's editable by a non-technical person, and they can actually start interacting with it, and you can guarantee that a player needs to have a point and needs to have a faction selected so I can save my data correctly. And if I save this thing and I turn it off just to show you the point of the extension, and I go back to that content, as you can see, this is not working because it's live demo. Yay. Where is it? Probably I didn't save any value, right? Go back. Let me just add a name here. Diego. I'm gonna add Shy. And I'm gonna give me 50 points. And I'm gonna give you 20 points.
It's like the end at 30.
Yeah, okay, did you save? Yeah, sure. Let me just, now I just want to turn it off. I just want to show you the actual JSON file. Save it. Content. Come on, work. Hey, there you go. So this is that was the whole magic that was happening behind the scenes. As you can see, we don't want an editor doing this thing, but the other way, it is way nicer. So now let's go to our demo number 2. This is more bringing it back to not board games, real companies type of stuff. So this is kind of like going back to Ecobee. So we're right now redesigning our entire press section under the new platform. And one of the stuff that we wanted to do was being able to show little cards similar to what we saw in the previous demo, with just reference to our articles posted out there in the media that is talking about our company. And one of the things that we wanted from that is like at the bottom of the card to show, oh look, this is the company that is here. And it will be the name of the company and their logo. So I was like, well, if we have a text field and I'll have an image field, and then we'll have to have upload both things, but that doesn't guarantee me the next time that the editor comes here, they don't remember that I already have the logo of that company. They might misspell the name of the company. So it's like, is there a way that I can guarantee that this, and I don't make it rigid, so I don't need to, every single time that they need a new publisher, I need to go and modify my content model so I can give them the options. And I found an API that actually gives you that. It gives you the name of a company and it gives you their logo. So what we're trying to do with this one is basically turn a regular text field into an autocomplete. That autocomplete will hit an API, which is this API called Clearbit, and it will get the information from the API, and then you're gonna store that information so you can use it, and then you guarantee that your editor is always typing, I don't know, Disney the right way. And the last thing is like for every single time that they press a key, we'll get the closest 5 results to that specific match. So just a couple of quick points for this, so you kind of have the full context of this entire thing. This demo uses React. It's basically a small React app that is ejected. I took a skeleton from GitHub. A guy already did the whole ejection, hooking the SDK type of stuff, so I was like, well, this is already done for me. I don't need to redo it. Use the Clearbit free API to get the information. Use the React select component that you can get from NPM just to get the dropdown and refreshing that endpoint quickly. Because Contentful has a limitation for your UI extensions, if they're small enough, they can be just uploaded the way that I did it with the CLI. But if they exceed a certain amount that I don't remember right now,
50 kilobytes.
50 kilobytes, then you need to self-host it. And as you can imagine, a full React application, definitely not 50 kilobytes. So I just went to now.sh and I just uploaded there, put my URL, and then it just works, like pretty simple. And the last thing, using Contentful's NPM package to just like bring the SDK in the ES6 way as a module, because I have Webpack, so I can just pass that and automatically bundle it with my entire thing, rather than like putting like my HTML in the top the way that you saw it in the previous demo. For this one, I'm actually gonna show the code. I hope it makes sense. I tried putting in 3 rows, so it kind of like you can see the entire thing. Can you see it? Is that a yes or no? I guess. Okay. So in this case, it's like we have 3 main files. That it is actually. Go back here. This is basically what I want to show for first. You have 3 main files: the app.js, the select search companies, and the select search. Basically, 2 components in your main root. And the 2 main things that you want to know from the package of the JSON: you need to bring the API package, and you need to bring the SDK. Now we can actually go to the demo. So the app.
Sorry, could you zoom in just a little bit, like one more?
A little bit one more.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this one takes the entire thing.
Oh.
So the furthest here in the left, it is the app that is basically just rendering a component that it gets a default values, and it gets a method to update the field. And as you can see, this method, it is interacting very similar way to the one before. It uses the API and the field, and that sets the value when the field changes. The only difference thing is like this is not injected in the window. I'm basically initializing this when my component is mounted, and I'm storing the SDK inside my state so I can have quick access to the SDK that is in the global object directly in my React component, so I don't need to be constantly hitting window. And of course, the last thing that is just sitting there is like default values if I already have one. So I can have like the value that I'm storing as well as my API in my state. The other component, the component that basically the app is rendering, is just rendering the actual search component. And the things that it's doing, it is when the component gets new options, it will connect to the endpoint from Clearbit using Axios. We'll get the 5 latest, the 5 closest matches, and that will set that in my status and my suggestions. So they can pass this down to my other component, and the handle chain basically is just the same method that is going down the props, like basically prop drilling classic React way. And the last one, if I can move this, oh, you know what? Let me just close this. And the last component, it is just a React select. That is basically, this is a stateless component. It's just consuming the entire thing. Whatever you pass down, as soon as it changes, bubbles us up to the app, and it refreshes every single time that you hit it. So if I now show you the Contentful side of that, this is an actual thing that we're using. So we have the news. This is one of the examples that I was telling you as a card. See, as a card has a title, has a feature image, has an excerpt, URL, and this is my UI extension. So if in this case, I say that I want to put like a set this thing here, I can start typing, and this will connect to the API, give me the autocomplete, I can store it, and as you can see here, it was showing me like it is updating. I was gonna do it again. Pay attention to this part of here. This is the interaction with the SDK, so it's reading that you're interacting with the component, and it's triggering the admin. So let's say that I put here, I don't know, ESPN. And I save it, see how it's saying, like, it's just saving, and it's basically refreshing. It's the same way that if you would have done it with any of the regular Contentful fields, but you are triggering that method with the SDK in your own app or in your index file, and it's telling Contentful basically to update the data. And as soon as I save this, I'm not gonna go through the same turning off the application again, because this just stores it as a plain text, and that's it. Go back, and yeah, that's it. Questions? Anything that people want to know? Thanks to Shai for the demo number 1 that I kind of stole.
It was exciting to see. I wasn't expecting it, so.
That was great. That was the first way to get into it.
And not related to anything, no one's going to ask, what font are you using?
What font?
Yeah.
Oh, that is Dark Mono. So it is a paid one, but it's not a crazy one.
Right, no,
There's a mono one that is super expensive, like $200.
Right.
This one is like $40, and you have ligatures. So for me, it was like, oh yeah, this is my jam.
I'll be honest, I kind of also want you to just run me through your hyper setup. So.
Yeah, my hyper setup is also quite fancy. So yeah, I spend time in like my tooling. Well, yeah, if someone has no questions, I hope I have to, of course, have to plug the classic we're hiring. And that's this link for the slides if you want to get them. And at the last slide, I just have the references. So you can get the repos for both UI extensions, so you can play with them, see how I set them up. This is basically a skeleton that I use